That Chris Bowen, the Energy Minister, he tried to fool you today about his clean energy crusade. He told a ridiculous lie, or a half-truth, or whatever you want to call it, about why your power bills are going up yet again, why more heavy industries will be destroyed by this madness from the Albanese government. No wonder he looked sick and embarrassed. Now, you'll have heard already that the Australian Energy Regulator has recommended yet another rise in maximum electricity prices, this time up to nearly 9% in New South Wales. Less elsewhere, but still up. In a separate decision, electricity prices in Victoria also going up, although only a little, an average of $12 a year for householders, but more for business. And all this means we are paying much, much more for electricity than we were 3 years ago when the Albanese government, with Chris Bowen, actually won on this promise to cut electricity prices, not send them through the roof.
$275 by 2030, $275 by 2025. We stand by that.
$275 for households.
Reducing power prices by $275.
Now, the opposition leader was absolutely correct today.
I think it's time for Chris Bowen to be sacked.
And I've said that for a year now already. You've heard me. I mean, Bowen and the whole government lied to you back then, before the last election. Either that or they had absolutely no idea what they were doing, forcing us to use more and more wind and solar power. So they're now essentially paying for two electricity systems, their green one and a fossil fuel one for when there is no wind and no sun. No wonder prices have exploded. Now, all this I'm sure you already know. But what you probably don't know is how Chris Bowen today, again, didn't just refuse to admit it's completely stuffed this up. He actually pretended this wasn't the fault of his beloved wind farms and solar farms. No, it was those dumb coal generators.
One of the reasons for this decision today is spikes caused by coal-fired power stations breaking down.
Let me expose his spin. In fact, this is what the Australian Energy Regulator actually did say today. I'll quote it. That average wholesale market spot prices increased across 2024, impacted by factors such as high demand, coal generator network outages, that bit's true, but it also went on to say also low solar and wind output. Bowen didn't mention that, did he? Oh, not enough wind and solar. That's absolutely true that aging coal generators do sometimes break down and need maintenance, particularly when the government's made it uneconomic to invest in them. But the wind and solar power that we are subsidising with billions of dollars could not make up the difference. But even worse, as you just heard, they're unreliable in their output. Last year there was a bad wind drought, for instance. Not enough wind. Suddenly less electricity. You can't rely on wind. How often does it need to be said? Now, it's often said, it's a truism, that the definition of madness is to keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result, which is Chris Bowen. He today promised to actually keep doing what is destroying us, our power system, to keep closing coal stations and to make us even more dependent on unreliable wind and solar. He attacked the opposition for actually wanting to keep those coal-fired generators running, even though he just complained that we were short of electricity without them.
If you are planning on keeping coal in the grid for longer, that puts upward pressure on prices. Those fundamental facts remain. Now, we'll continue with that approach.
And that's why Chris Bowen has to be sacked. He's now so deep in this disaster of his own making that to admit it would, to now change course, that would be like saying, oh, sorry, I really didn't ever have a clue. Sorry about that. Sorry that I've caused enormous pain for absolutely no good. You sack him. I mean, the man's so out of ideas. I tell you, what he said today, his plan is actually to keep building more wind and solar, but to pay you back with your own money for the higher prices. He takes your money in taxes and gives it back to you to make you feel better about paying higher electricity prices. It really is that stupid.
Our approach of short-term relief coupled with a longer-term plan is the right plan for Australia.
It's like a thief breaking into your home, breaking up all the furniture, destroying the kitchen, slashing the sofa, and then grabbing your wallet and saying, here, let me pay for the damage with your own money. You can't run a country like that. And we're seeing the damage. Our nickel industry, already wiped out by higher power prices than you find in, say, Indonesia. They use coal. Our last glass manufacturer of glass for buildings, just wiped out this year, in part by higher gas prices. Our last big plastics manufacturer, wiped out in part by higher energy prices.
It's abundantly clear to all Australians now that the government's renewables-only energy policy is a disaster for families and for small businesses. There are 27,000 small businesses which have closed their doors over the course of the last 2.5 years, and in many cases, energy costs will be a contributing factor to the overwhelming circumstances that those businesses found themselves in.
Now, the worst? Polls suggest that Anthony Albanese and Chris Bowen will still win the election, but only with Greens and the Teal independents, all of them climate extremists, helping them to form government. What do you think is going to happen? It means a re-elected Labor government would go in even harder then, with the global warming policies already crippling us, supercharged this time by the Greens and the Teals, making us weak when we most need to be strong.